The day before. So IGN made a review of the game. There it is.
Before we get started, a quick note from the editor here.
Yeah.
Just 4 days after its early access release, the day before was removed from sale on Steam, and the developer announced it was shutting down. The servers remain up for now for anyone who bought it, but since our reviewer went to the trouble of playing it, it seems only right that you get to see what he thought while it lasted.
Yeah.
Now, on with the review.
Can you hear me? 5 long years. That's how long the now defunct developer Fantastic supposedly spent assembling the day before. This wholly disappointing online zombie survival shooter contains essentially nothing of what was originally promised over the years leading up to its disastrous early access release. Not only is it not an MMO, but it hardly passes as a survival shooter at all. During the handful of hours I managed to spend with it before
whenever I watch somebody else play it, it really puts it into perspective.
It went belly up, I ran into such severe performance issues on my GeForce RTX 4070 Ti and Ryzen 3900X equipped PC that it felt like it would have been a waste of time to continue anyway. That is, even if the running around the day before's questionably designed city collecting loot was any fun to begin with.
You don't even collect any loot. There's nothing that's interesting in the game. It's sad. Stolen assets? Bro, the only thing this game stole from me was time.
You wake up in the ramshackle survivor camp of a New York-inspired metropolis filled with questionable decals that look precariously similar to real-world businesses.
I actually thought that the numbers, like, you know, they had the llama thing for Amazon. I actually thought that some of those were kind of clever.
It's unclear where the zombies are coming from or why you should care, and the whole thing might be forgivable if it was framed as a parody, but unfortunately, the generic survivors of this unimaginative world seem to take its zombie outbreak seriously.
When the aggressive, infected individuals took to the streets, it only took a couple of weeks for New Fortune City to completely fall.
After a decently...
It really sounds like garbage whenever I listen to it again.
Paced tutorial, the day before comes up short on even the most basic features one would expect in a survival game.
Yeah.
Gone are the dynamic environments and tight firefights shown off in its now mysteriously absent trailers.
Was that Ronald McDonald?
Instead, you'll mostly spend your time running around a static city.
Well, I love the alarm in the background.
Escape that looks pretty at first glance, but offers absolutely no depth.
Yeah, there's nothing.
You might find a zombie or two while scavenging for loot, but they rarely pose any threat. What shocked me the most about the day before was the notable absence of, like, almost any UI. Sure, there's a touchscreen display for your quests, but you can only track one at a time. There's also a clunky makeshift map, but you're a sitting duck while looking at it. The inventory screen is also bare bones, and even if you manage to find yourself
it's not bare bones, you have to understand. It's just something that they bought off of the Unreal store. Like, this was like $79. And they just ported it over one for one.
Same squad with other players, it's almost impossible to figure out where they are, or even if they're still on your team. Not only is there no multiplayer menu, there's no voice chat either.
No.
You can communicate with your party.
I couldn't even open my party frame up.
Rudimentary in-game chat window, but even getting that to work is a pain. I'd have a more enjoyable time actually hiding under a dumpster surrounded by zombies, like Glenn from The Walking Dead, than waiting for the day before's multiplayer to work right. Since there isn't much guidance at all, I had to find out the hard way that the day before wasn't simply not telling me how to do certain things, like melee combat or
well, it's not that they didn't tell you how to do it. It told you how to do everything in the game. You just can't do that. You can't vault. You can't melee, you can't do anything.
Camp in the alleged open world.
The developer, by the way, responded to criticism about the game on Twitter. The response was, guys, look, I mean, shit happens. I mean, shit happens, guys. Like, that's just what it is. They actually said that.
Literally doesn't have those features at all. That's right. If you find yourself running around without a gun for some reason, good luck outrunning all these absolutely brainless zombies because your hands and feet are useless.
The day never came.
The day before is not an MMO or even an open world, despite claims from its developer that it would be both of those things. Instead,
well, I mean, just because they say something doesn't mean it's true. I mean, like, yeah, they said it was going to be open world. That doesn't mean that it's really going to be like open world. I mean, come on.
It's fundamentally an extraction shooter with only one goal. Sluggishly run around the mostly empty city, grab some loot, and get to one of the extraction points before you die.
That's right.
The only things you carry over between runs are any gear you manage to take with you, as well as any currency you save up by selling the scraps of loot back to base.
Yep.
If you somehow die before making it home, which is the norm thanks to an unrestricted free-for-all PvP system, you lose everything you had on your body.
Look at that, bro, watch.
To an unrestricted free-for-all PvP system, you lose...
What was the time there? That's like at least like a third of a second before it died.
Everything you had on your body, meaning you'll often progress backward as your currency dwindles.
Yeah.
That currency can be spent on new items at the main outpost, Woodbury, which serves as the headquarters for your daily operations. There are merchants, a few NPCs that spout bland, set-dressing dialogue, and a storage area for your loose gear and money.
How are you doing? Put your things in here.
It's cool that...
Man, watching the shit over again really puts it into perspective, doesn't it?
That it's also populated by other players between loot runs, and it's great that you can team up with anyone while you're in this hub. It's significantly less cool, however, that the hub area's NPCs, the only NPCs in the day before, mind you, are so dryly written and unenthusiastically voice acted that they sound like they could be the poor result of a generative AI.
For example, if you frequently carry a heavy backpack, over time you'll be able to carry even more items.
It's difficult to forgive...
Yeah, that does sound really stupid, huh? Wow.
...that on its own, but it's even harder still when you realize there's genuinely no story content after the first 30 or so minutes it takes to complete the tutorial. There's also no clear reason to do any of its procedurally generated quests, which have you looting random items for an NPC back at camp, other than to earn a meager amount of extra currency, which makes it suck even more that you can only take on one at a time. The day before takes place almost entirely outdoors during the day, and there are no unique weather effects to shake things up. The landscape...
Well, sometimes it gets darker. I mean, like, so they have a day and night cycle. I mean, there you go. That's got to be really good. Barely paid anything in development. It's just...
Fortune City
the fucking
is a largely
alarms,
static zone with limited space, where the most exciting thing you'll find is an occasional container with 1 or 2 pieces of junk loot.
Wow.
Despite that, the frame rate still struggled to remain stable on my mid-end gaming PC,
problems, but yeah.
and the constant bugs and stuttering made it downright annoying to play it at all. There are essentially no unique zombie encounters or bosses either, and very little in the way of landmarks or special areas containing different types of loot. The few there are that seem like they should house unique gear aren't very good at it. Spots like a police station armory, for example, are generally empty, and usually only serve to make excellent traps for other more coordinated bands of players to gank you for all of your hard-earned scrap.
Yeah, I remember, like, the first game that I played, I got the gun. I just got instantly killed. It was the worst thing ever. Dude, where's my gear?
Surviving all the way to extraction is frustratingly difficult on higher population servers, even with a squad by your side, thanks to a limited number of extraction points on the map, all of which are situated next to choke points constantly abused by more powerful groups of players.
That's what I did. Well, here's really the problem. The problem is that the game's third person. Because you can just hide behind a wall and then just look from third person, wait for somebody to run by, and then shoot them. That's literally it. That's all you have to do. Like, that's the problem with PUBG, too. Like, I actually think that PUBG third person was kind of okay, but, like, the reason why it's kind of okay is because it didn't really matter. And also, the rest of the game was pretty good. None of the game was good.
Not only is this unfair and unfun on its own, there's currently an unfixed currency duplication glitch.
Yeah.
Which means you can bet most of those other players are cheating to get high-powered armor and weapons. Now that Fantastic is no more, the hopes of that ever getting fixed are slim to none. But hey, the sliver of good news here is at least there's a surprisingly decent variety of weapons. These range from handguns to scoped sniper rifles, In all, there are probably about 14 or so options available at the weapon dealer in town,
and they're all
but the
garbage.
catch is that you'll struggle to afford anything packing a real punch.
Exactly.
Weapons also
Yeah, it's too
handle
expensive.
reasonably well, though their cheap and underwhelming sound design leaves a lot to be desired.
I think one thing this definitely shows is that there's a tremendous desire for this kind of a game. The fact that there were 50,000 people playing this game concurrently whenever it came out indicates that obviously people really want this. You can't even buy this game on Steam anymore. It has no buy button. Common Steam W.
The bigger your backpack, the more loot you can carry. But just like everything else in your inventory, you'll lose your backpack as soon as you die. This sucks because backpacks are relatively expensive to replace, and you essentially need one in order to haul anything worthwhile back from a run. If you're lucky, you might be able to find one on another player's corpse, but it's more likely you'll be unprepared to fight anyone if you're low on cash.
Well, you don't need to be prepared. See, he doesn't understand. All you have to do is hide behind a wall and then use the third-person perspective to watch their character and effectively wall hack them, wait for them to move their character to where they can't see you, and then come out from behind the wall and then shoot them in the back until they're not moving anymore. Then you just go and loot them. Problem solved. There it is. You win. Surprise, motherfucker. Yeah, you're right. True. The verdict.
The Day Before is easily one of the worst games I have ever played. To the point where
I don't think it's one of the worst games I had ever played. Like, I've played some really, really bad games.
I'm afraid to continue running it on my PC. Sure, you could say there are the bones of something coherent here.
Yeah, sure.
But even those bones feel splintered and brittle. Its map is lifeless, its enemies are idiotic, its PvP is an exploitable mess, its story is pointless, and its progression is downright infuriating. While the now defunct developer Fantastic said it wasn't done, certain baseline standards have been established in the years since early access became a thing.
Yeah, like everything.
And this game met none of them.
There were no standards at all with this game. They just bought a bunch of assets and then reused them. And again, Only Up was a bunch of reused assets as well. That's why whenever I found out that they were reusing assets, I didn't go and complain about that. I thought to myself, oh, okay, well, that's fine. I mean, as long as the gameplay is good, that's what really matters. But yeah, there was no gameplay.
Mysterious questions around The Day Before's development will likely go unanswered now that the curtain has fallen, leaving the player base to fend for itself until the servers are inevitably shut down for good. And if you didn't
they're not being shut down, they're being put out of their misery.
To try it firsthand, you can count yourself as one of the lucky ones.
Yep.
No, the score graphic didn't get stuck. That's a 1 out of 10, folks.
Jesus.
For more of 2023's worst games, check out our reviews of The Walking Dead Destinies or Flashback 2. And for everything else, stick with IGN.
Keep your senses sharp, react swiftly, aim accurately, and you'll return here with a full backpack many times.
Wow. There it is, a 0. I originally gave it a 3. I said, on the first day, I said, it's about a 3. It's not a great game. Like, I usually, I don't even know what a 1 would be. Like, a 1 is like E.T. on Atari, right? It's something that's, just so crazily bad that you can't even comprehend how terrible it really is. So, that's my perspective for it, right? Is if I have this, I don't even want to take a chance on it, right? So it's E.T. on Atari is a 0. Yeah, it's something like that. But I'd have to really think about what the worst version of it could possibly be, the worst fucking game.